Here.
Joanne?
Here.
I'm here. Stand for the pledge, please. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would we please have a moment of silence for Ray Langer, who passed away? Thank you. Public input.
David Curl, 79 Main Street. Referring to the two letters that were sent to the town council dated May 27th and June 2nd. The last meeting, Mr. Roy, you told us that you instructed Francine to put Mr. Patty and Mr. Crowley's name into a form letter and then came in and signed it separately. At the same meeting, the chief said that you discussed that letter, referring to it as the first one, in non-public session, which occurred.
Like I told you the last meeting, it was a generic form of letter that we've been using since Chief Oliver's days. And we just instructed her to put the two candidates. And the same thing occurred when Mr. LaRue probably came in, I don't know how many days later.
So you're saying it was not discussed in non-public session of the 19th meeting?
There's no discussion, it was just a form letter, and Francine was instructed to send it. And
Was that at the 19th meeting? Or was that, you gave
It
me
would
the
have
impression that it came in separately?
It would have been the first one, and then when LaRue came in right at the last minute, the same instructions were given. We came up and we signed them individually.
So you did the first one at the meeting? Is that what you're saying?
No, we just instructed her at the meeting to send them out.
The reason I'm asking is because you entered that meeting under 91A3, Roman numeral 2-C, which I won't bother to read to you, but I don't think they had any right to be discussing or instructing anything about potential police commission candidates at that time, but I'm not going to waste any time with that. I'm going to move right on. Chief, there are a few things that I'd like to clarify with you. These are items from the banner story published July 15th, 2009, entitled Hooksett School Resource Officer in, Defina out. It stated that on Monday, July 13th, Defina found out that he had been replaced as SRO through a memo posted at the department. No one at the department informed Defina directly. Is that true?
I honestly don't remember. I know that an order was cut changing the assignment. I don't know if he received the order first or he received the notification from his supervisor first. That I don't know.
So you didn't have anything to do with notifying him?
No.
The document referring to Defina's review, it said, the document states, given this officer's repeated pattern of incompetence and insubordination, I am recommending that Officer Defina be terminated. I fear that retaining this officer may be subject to the department to litigation or negligent retention. That could have been, that was a quote that Lieutenant Klein said when he wrote it in his review. Is that true?
I'm not going to comment on any ongoing personnel issues.
Even though it's in the paper?
Correct.
As it also stated, as for the school resource officer, Agrafiotis said that the change is better for everyone. Is that how you felt?
At this point, yeah.
Thank you. Also, it said for the future, he said, we're looking to improve on the program. The superintendent and I have worked together for years together on the problem. We're the people to be dealing with those issues on the school side. I hope they let the superintendent do his job, which is to deal with us. The school board shouldn't be involved in the day-to-day operation of the superintendent.
Correct.
That's correct. When asked on Tuesday, July 14th, if Defina had been recommended for termination, the chief first said, if he told you that, he is lying. About a half an hour later, he retracted that statement, saying that Lieutenant did in fact recommend termination, but that he had no reason to assume that Defina would be let go.
Correct.
Now, By saying that, aren't you revealing portions of Officer Tratina's personnel file to the public?
He had already called the newspaper, so I was responding to a request from the paper.
But I've asked you things here in this meeting that you wouldn't respond to because you said it was a personnel issue. By you confirming that,
I was just trying to set the record straight as far as I knew it, and then I called the paper back when I realized I had made a mistake.
so you confirmed information in his personnel file.
No, that's not in this file. Evaluation would not have been in this file at that point. I was only confirming or denying one specific point.
You wouldn't consider that part of his personnel file that they reviewed?
Well, they hadn't even got to me yet, so it wasn't official.
Well, we've had many discussions on what gets called the personnel issue, and I would think that certainly would be, but I'm not going to waste more time on that right now. From the Union Leader article,
Anyone else?
Laura Willett, 3 Somerville Street. Dave, I have a question for you. At the last commission meeting, there was a discussion regarding a detective that had left rather abruptly and had expressed an interest in meeting with the entire commission. At the time, he was only given the opportunity to meet with one commissioner. You said he could meet with the entire commission. Can you tell me if that has happened?
We have not been called by him. Not that we haven't. He's never notified us saying that's what he wants to do.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. And regarding the agenda, has the commission changed its practice after the problems encountered at the last meeting?
To be addressed to that.
Okay, thank you. And the last question I had was for Henry. We had talked at one of the meetings about a job description that had been passed out with inappropriate memos attached to it, and you were going to get your copy and give copies to the rest of the commissioners. Has that been done?
I haven't found it, and I believe Jason was going to supply me with one.
Okay, thank you.
J.R. Willett, 3 Summerfield Street. Henry, you had made a statement about a lorry issue in the past. Can you tell me what the lorry case is?
It's a case that addresses candor.
Is that public information?
I'm not sure.
The case itself is, you can go online and find the case itself.
Case is a Supreme Court case.
I'm asking Henry a question. Can you tell me where I can find that public information? If somebody had a lorry case or a lorry issue?
I would imagine you could be able to get it from the Supreme Court online. I don't know if they publish their cases. I'm not an attorney. Maybe Jim can handle it. How would he find that lorry case? Would that be a website for the Supreme Court or?
Yep, it's online.
So
The case.
So in any event,
But that's not what you're asking, is it? I mean, you're
I'm asking
saying
if an officer had a lorry
issue.
Yeah.
How would you find out if that
That's
officer?
correct. How would
had
I
it?
find that out?
Okay, that's a different question than finding the actual case. So, maybe the commissioners want to address that. I mean, if he has a lorry issue, I mean, that, for one thing, it's going to be in his personnel file, I suppose. And it might have come up in other cases. I mean, if he has a credibility problem, it's going to be up to the department to disclose that to the defense if he's going to testify for the prosecution. And so as a matter of public record, it would have come up, I suppose, in other cases.
So I would say the commission would be privy to that information.
I don't know whether they would or not.
Have you ever personally viewed documentation about a lorry case?
I've read the case.
You read a case?
I've read the lorry case. And I told you it addresses candor. Now, whether or not Jason has ever had to reveal that to a defense attorney, I don't know, because I've only been here 3 years.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Anyone else?
Clarification, what is the lorry case?
What is the what?
What is a lorry case?
Specific.
I'll defer to the attorney. He's the attorney.
Steve can address it directly, he probably has to deal with it on a daily basis.
Basically, what had happened is a number of years ago, and I don't remember what the year was, it was online, there was an issue up in Franklin where there was a homicide, and when the suspect ended up in court, the defense brought up the issue that I believe it was a sergeant at the time up in Franklin, had a history of untruthfulness in past law enforcement jobs prior to that department. And I believe, and maybe you can tell me if I'm saying this right, but the gist of it was that the defense has the right to know about any issues that an officer has for credibility. So they can help plan, the defense attorney can help plan the defense. Because if the theory is that if an officer has been untruthful at one point, why are they now not being truthful in a new point? So quickly, you get stopped tomorrow, you get a ticket, he or she says you're going 90 and you say you're going 30. You're going to fight it. You're going to have the right to find out if that person has had credibility issues in the past. If your attorney learns through the discovery process that's the case, then your attorney has the option of petitioning the court to have that officer's personnel file reviewed in camera by the judge to determine if there is anything in that personnel file that talks about credibility that may negatively impact you as a defendant in your case. And then the judge makes a ruling based on his or her in-camera interview of whether that officer's credibility or lack thereof may in some way harm you. And then the judge goes from there. But it's really to protect everybody, all of us, from officers that have had credibility issues and whose credibility is a question or could be a question, especially if you have a case where you don't have witnesses or a lot of physical evidence or something like that. So it's a protection for everybody. Across the country, it's called, it's not Laurie, it's,
Oh, okay.
we're not the only state that's had that, and I have it somewhere in my stuff, but across the country, it's called something else.
It's Lori Materials.
It's what?
Lori Materials.
Not across the country, it's called something else. There's a similar case. There's a similar case across the country that basically talks about the same thing.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none. Non-published minutes, August 10th.
So moved.
Under personnel issues, second paragraph, where it says replacement care, it should be replacement car. That's all I have. Anybody else?
Where's that?
All in favor with amendment?
Aye.
Non-public minutes, August 10th.
So moved.
Weren't those the non-public minutes that you just,
I'm sorry, August 18th.
aren't you going to do the public minutes of
There's no
August?
public, I don't have any public.
Yeah, they
Oh,
were
yeah.
public minutes of August 10th.
Well, let's stay with the non-public of August 18th, I'm sorry. There's so many new papers in here. Anybody have any corrections? I'll second the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Public minutes, August 10th.
Make a motion.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Public minutes of August 18th.
So moved.
Before we go forward with those minutes, just a question for clarification with regard to what we had decided previously with regard to what we include in the minutes and what we don't include in the minutes. There's this,
Which one do you want?
yeah, I'm on the 18th. On the 18th, these comments that were made, I thought we had agreed that those were just going to be attached and they're now included in the body, and maybe I misunderstood and I just...
No, you're right. That's
Okay.
what we agreed.
And I guess I would suggest, given that fact, that I hate to see Francine redraft them, but just pull that out. So I guess I would suggest that they be tabled for the time being, because what we're trying to do here is, you know, to establish some parameters.
Correct, but you can, these are only a draft, you can accept them with those being pulled and put as an attachment if you would like.
So you just want them added on at the end?
Yeah. Doesn't-
Yeah, those, well, I have a correction on page 8, where it says James Sullivan. I believe it was not James Sullivan, I believe it was Richard Sullivan.
It was.
James says the other.
Yes, that's right.
You'll break that habit eventually.
And I believe with regard to, on that same page, that there was another correction that was made after the fact, that besides the enforce to reinforce, there was another correction that was made by a member of the public that came up. Do you recall?
I don't.
There was an accept versus a...
Right. If you go back and make sure that that's included in there. Remember, there was a gentleman that got up at the second point of the public input that said that there was another error. Okay, that was the only other thing that I had. And I'll go along with that, that's fine, if that's the way.
With modifications, I make a motion.
Second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, town budget?
Okay, excuse me, Commissioners, you have the police department budget and the town budget. They both come out to the same amount, which basically shows that as of the date of this report, that the town was 9 weeks into the budget year, which equals 17.31%, and the PD was 12.65% expended. And you have the town's numbers, and you have also have, which you just received tonight, was on your desk, Francine's numbers.
I have a question. Could I ask with regard to that report, see, I don't really know at this point, and I apologize. Perhaps I can get at some point what the accounts mean. With regard to when it just says police equipment, what kind of equipment?
Under that's obviously a general category. That's basically anything, equipment that the officers need. It could be guns, it could be belts, it could be really anything that goes to, I don't know the definition in front of me, it'll be the budget time, but anything that is equipment that you need to equip the officers for them to do their job.
Well, what is the one under it that says personnel equipment? Are they one and the same, or are they two different?
No, personnel is more the uniforms.
Oh, okay,
The
that's
uniforms,
where I
everything
had.
else is the
okay.
hardware, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Oh, okay, that's where I didn't understand. Okay. Thank you.
Anything on the budget?
Good,
What's
Steve.
that? Commissioners, I sent you a memo about citizen program ideas. We discussed this briefly last meeting, and I had mentioned that I had some input from some citizens about some other ideas. I put that in a memo to you people to look at. Didn't know if you had a chance to read it, and if you had any thoughts. We weren't looking for any decision tonight. I just wanted to keep the ball rolling on that, throw out some ideas, and also get you all thinking as we're heading into the budget season, if there's any other ideas. Specifically, what I was thinking about is, what a citizen mentioned to me was, as we know, the administrator recently had an input session with citizens. And I was wondering if that's something, prior to us getting into our budget process, that might be something the commission might want to do, given the fact that as bad as the economy is, the town is still seeing growth, and that's going to be, I think, an issue that is going to be tough for all of us to face at budget time. Is, Exit 10 is still growing. We haven't seen the activity level spike over there yet, but it did after Exit 10 had originally opened up, and now with Walmart over there, I don't think it's going to slow down any. But yet at the same time, we're all going to be facing the realities of the budget, or I'm sorry, the economy this year. So one of my first thoughts was, prior to budget time, did the commission, think about it, if you want to maybe have some type of session like that, where the question is asked, similar to what Carol did, what do you want to see from the future, from the police department, and specifically, I think maybe to give us some direction, specifically you, because it's your budget that goes to the town council. But again, it's just an idea, just a thought. I just wanted to keep the ball rolling on that. If there's any interest, fine. If there isn't, fine, or other ideas, I just wanted to get out to you.
I think that's a good idea. The other thing, and I don't say that we need to mirror ourselves, from everything that the surrounding towns do, but there are a number of different programs that other communities have. One of them is like a neighborhood watch and things like that. And I don't know what the burglary rate is in this community, but I do know that one occurred in my neighborhood right across the street from me in broad daylight. And I just wondered if that is something as a community that, probably you can inform people about, or something that we should take up.
Well, that's something to talk about. In the past, we have done that with specific neighborhoods that have contacted us with problems. Instead of trying to do a whole town-wide thing because of our manpower, when we've had problems or situations that say somebody from your neighborhood had said that, we would meet with citizens in that neighborhood and basically tailor something for that neighborhood rather than a town-wide approach, because we don't have the manpower to have somebody.
Well, I wasn't talking necessarily about having someone from the police department,
Right.
but I think there must be a way of educating the public on having a better awareness of their surroundings. Another one that I thought about, and I don't know what the situation, but I know there was a concern a couple of years ago about the children at the bus stop, and sometimes people driving by, and whether or not that's another situation where you would have more or less of a neighborhood watch, where probably you could encourage a parent to be at the bus stop.
Right. If you remember, back when Frank was here, we had the community service.
Right, and that's, yeah.
And that, since Frank left, that
But
position has not been funded.
I don't think what she's saying would involve anything from us except for initial.
Right, it's
Neighborhood watch is done by the people in the
neighbors.
neighborhood.
But you still have to have the kickoff, if you will.
Right, but it's not going to involve anything more than a meeting here to get it set up, or, one meeting in a particular neighborhood. I think we're making too much out of this.
It may require some education.
Some education,
Because I
right.
think sometimes the public, the public isn't always aware of what they can and they can't do, and what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate.
Well, that's why I wanted
But
to get
those
this
are just
discussion
two
going.
things that I thought of that have been issues,
Well, I think meeting with the citizens should be done
Right.
by you guys, not us.
No, exactly, yes,
And
exactly.
I think it's something we should follow through, even as simple as a neighborhood watch. And, like you said, bring it to the school bus stops.
We
at the
have
same
in the
time.
past, but not as a formal program. We've done it on an as-need basis. If we've had issues recently at the theater, with people breaking into cars. Lieutenant, I believe, and the captain, we met with them as far as security issues last week, wasn't it?
Correct.
Met with them as far as security issues down there and the problems that we've been having down there. And so we've done it, but not very formally, if you will. We've done it as needed, targeted. If we want to move into a more formal level, that's something to look at too. That's why I wanted to get this discussion going, because it does play into the amount of time, though, that the staff, we'll have to put some time and some effort into researching the stuff and whatever.
But I think it's more for the neighborhood, Steve, than the businesses, and I understand businesses have their own set of issues, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, Joanne, you're looking for the neighborhoods,
I'm looking for the neighborhoods, but I think what he originally was saying is that if you start off with a meeting where you get public input, because somebody else may certainly have
Absolutely.
something other than what we have, and you were just talking about the movie theater. Well, don't ever go to the movie theater when it's a good movie, because you're taking your life in your hands when you go out.
I turn right. I turn right and I go over here. Yeah, I know.
But let's move, I think we should
That would
move
be a
forward.
good way to start, and then you could branch out.
Maybe if it's okay, maybe not tonight, but if the three of you, think about what we've talked about and individually call me, I'll come up with a master list there of all the different ideas that we've talked about tonight or what you've come up with.
And the public certainly would have,
Right.
if you invite, as you were saying earlier, with
Right.
regard to the town
Well,
administrator.
that was A on here because, Carol did that, and from what I hear, it was fairly successful, so I thought
Right.
that might be an idea. But that may be something prior to budget time that we want to do because, it might be something that requires, something to be put into the budget or some consideration for budget.
I don't think there's any question the crime rate is going to go up. I mean, we saw it the other day in the Hannaford parking lot. People, as they've been out of work probably a year now, they're going to get bolder and bolder because they're desperate. So, and I mean, that was done at broad daylight at 12 noon. And I think you're going to see a lot more incidents,
So if that's okay with you, if you could all give me a call and I'll just start with a master list.
Right.
And then you can let me know about any of this other, and we can see if we want to.
That's a very good point, because I even think that people don't even know how to arm themselves when they're, say, in a parking lot. They don't think about it. And like Henry said, I mean, can you believe that in broad daylight this happened?
with all the people there.
Yeah.
That's
It's a sign of the
That's
times.
desperation.
Exactly.
That's desperation.
Good
So,
idea.
I'm sorry.
It's a good idea.
It is.
I'll take the same information to the council.
And then if I could ask Paul, if you could be the conduit to pass back to me ideas from the same question, then I'll compile a master list. Maybe Carol has, I wonder if Carol has an outline that she used for her meeting.
With winter coming and getting darker sooner, let's move this along,
Hmm.
sooner than later. Just keep it on the front burner.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe you could have coffee there too.
We'll work on that, We're getting there, we're trying. We're trying, Elaine. Next thing for the commission was, I think we had talked in the past about the DARE fund. For those of you that remember back when we had the DARE program, we had a DARE account. Citizens donated money to the department because
What happened to the rest of the new business?
the rest of the new business.
That's under old business. We skipping down or?
Yeah,
Maybe my list doesn't match your list.
No, it
Jump off the
doesn't.
It
list.
doesn't. We
It
got
doesn't.
B, C, and a D.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
got B, C, and D.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, my list doesn't match. Okay, well, I'll go back to your list. That commission budget representative, I don't know if you guys are gonna decide, if you can, usually be the representative, we're starting into the budget season, we're gonna talk about CIP here shortly, and the budget season starts with CIP. Mary Maxella was our rep for the last couple of years, but I need to know who the rep is, and then I'd like to start meeting with that person to, whoever it is, to bring them up to speed on what we've done in the past, like what's in the CIP, which is the first get-go, and then as the budget stuff starts coming from the town, be able to know which commissioners my contact so we can start laying that out. We'll use the same basic outline for the budget that we have in the past, but that representative is the person that always meets with me and, learns the nitty-gritty prior to it coming to all of you.
Yeah, I guess I'll do it.
Thank you.
Is that how you obtain your right of passage here?
I thought we decided at the last meeting that I would do the union negotiations and Joanne was going to do the budget.
That sounds
I know you
good to
talked
me.
about it, but I didn't know for sure if that was, I just want to make sure that so what we can do then is when we get into CIP, I'll talk generally, but then, Joanne, if we could get together separately on the CIP and I can
Okay.
give you more history, then we'll have time to talk about tonight, because that's our first
Will
round.
you
if
be
you
making
will.
a presentation, though, to the commission with regard to what you're going to include?
For the CIP?
Yeah.
We always do, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But what we usually do is we bring the rep, our rep up to speed on it, and then ask the commission. Now, the problem, well, we'll get to the CIP in a minute, but, so you'll be the budget rep. So if you could get a hold of me when you have a chance, and we can start setting up some times to
Okay.
sit down on that. Thank you. Going down the list. Memo of understanding with the SAU, we did sign, as we usually do every year, current updated memorandum of understanding between the school district and the Hooksett Police Department. I gave the commissioners all a copy of that. So if you read through that when you have a chance, you see that there should be no question on either on our end or their end of what is required under the law and what the expectations are of each side. We've been doing this for a number of years. Usually what we try to do is update it every year. There's actually a little bit, some new language in this year that talks about the Department of Ed Administrative Rule
Right.
ED 31705 that hadn't been in the past. So that was accomplished. D was the CIP program. Just to jump into that quickly, what you received was the basics that came from the town. I have the big packet, the big book. Obviously, the town wanted the CIP packages returned by the 23rd. Well, obviously, we're not going to have the time to discuss everything and have a presentation for the 23rd. But what I'd like to do is, if it's okay with the commission, is, Joanne, to meet with you on this, bring you up to speed, and then see if we want to have an additional meeting, commission meeting, to have the commission decide on what I'm going to turn into the town for CIP requests. I'll show you what we've done in the past, some ideas that I've talked with my staff about for the future, whether they should be CIP items or whether they should be budget items, from that last training we went to. And then set up a meeting and have a, obviously it's up to the commission finally what I send to the town for a CIP request.
I think though the CIP is pretty straightforward about what you can include, and in fact I think Christine would certainly, make people certainly aware of what can be and what can be put into
Right.
the operating budget.
Right, and I wasn't thinking so much of that part is that's to me the second step. The first step is, besides, or number one, do you want to do the current project that's been ongoing? Do you want to put that in again? And then maybe 1B of that is, are there any new ones you might want to think about? And then 3 would be, do they fall into, as you said, under the true definition of CIP, or should they be budget items, or should they be warrant items?
Only, if I might have another question. The only thing that I thought about was the fact of last year, when they had the deliberative session with regard to using those impact fees, that we're mindful of that if we can roll that into one, that you can use the impact fees. I think, we ought to do that, for growth, anything that has to do with the growth, that you would do that.
Well, that's a question from last month too, about the laptops and the impact fees. Did we investigate any?
Yeah.
We did at this point. What we're doing is we're putting together the numbers for what it would cost to do that program. Because it's the laptops in the cars, which we have, but it's the computer, it's the through Verizon, the connection from the cars.
Right, but did we find out if we could use
The impact
the impact fees?
That was the
only
question.
Right, no, we didn't. We're getting the numbers and stuff first.
I think that Christine could certainly,
Yeah, let's find out if we can use it. The numbers are relevant either way we go, but right now, if the impact fees are usable, that's one less thing on the plate that we have to shift around to see how we're going to pay for it.
I think the issue that we just have to remember is, with the impact fees, is it has to be related to growth.
right.
We've never needed them before.
Well, that's where we're going to need the legal opinion, as the town did in the past, and you guys ran into that with,
Gets tricky.
is it
does.
truly an impact or is it not? Impact fee.
Well, some of the things I've seen that we've bought
Not
on
us.
other people's impact fees,
Right.
you could justify that the computers are because of a growing town, and, getting the cost is a great idea, but I don't want to drag our feet on just finding out how we're going to fund it, whether it's through something we have to do within, or if we can get those impact fees to be used.
And the other thing is, after you've gone beyond that period, you have to return them.
Yeah, we're still good, because we watch that
Yeah.
pretty closely, but I just,
She has in these documents here, Christine, I believe,
You've got the impact
back
fee.
these.
One of
Yeah.
the things too is, and maybe Paul could look into this, was back when the impact fee process was put into place, if you remember from that whole program, was that the police impact fees were primarily for building issues. So I don't know if the town, Paul, was looking at impact fees from the police and the fire accounts toward your building issues.
No. but taking care of the issues that we currently have.
Yeah, but those are outstanding issues, that's got nothing to do with growth.
Well, it depends what-
Because this building's falling apart, I don't
Yeah.
think you can use impact fees to
No, you
fix
But I
it.
don't, but I
Would be nice
didn't,
if
no,
we
exactly,
could.
you can't, but I didn't know if whatever the town is planning, was it just to fix the current structure, or is it to add anything?
We don't have the information.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying,
Right.
we don't either, but I just wouldn't want, if in their plans there's some
Expansion,
expansion that would be because of growth, that you have two groups looking to draw out of the same pot of
I know,
money.
but for right now, let's find out if we can use it.
Right, no, we will, I just wanted to
And
figure
then
that out.
we'll discuss around and see, you know, who's planning on using our impact fees. And if they don't have anything on their plate right now, I don't think we're gonna use, what is there, $86,000 in there?
99.
$99,000. I really don't believe we're gonna use that much for laptops, so, but that's a need in these cars right now, so we have half the equipment, let's just finish it off and figure out if it meets that criteria. If it doesn't, we'll move on and figure out something else. Yes.
I just wondered with regard to that review that is being done, you know, through the A&E, that they set aside that 92, whether or not any of that review is going to take into consideration the fact that you may have to be doing some expansion. Is that,
I don't know.
or is it, as
Review
Dave
that-
said, that only strictly dealing with trying to remedy the issues that are problematic with regard to the
you
building?
mean the committee that's been set up for the buildings?
No, not the committee that's been set up, that A&E architectural and engineering review that they set aside, that $92.5 thousand.
That's part of the evaluation of this building.
Right.
Right.
Now, when they are doing that review,
Mhm.
is any consideration going to be given to asking the question whether or not either
Expansion
police,
needed or anything along those lines, you mean?
yeah,
Not that I know of.
I just
The
wonder
intent
if that
is-
might
the
be
intent is to-
appropriate.
It would be.
That's-
It would
that's,
be
I think, what I'm
if
getting at.
the chief and the commission were to come back to the council and say, hey, we have a need to expand, or, because you did, I guess it was like 6 months ago, we talked about additional land.
Right. Well, it's actually, the committee is actually touring this building tomorrow morning, looking at, going over the summary sheet of problems and future needs.
But the immediate intent is to just
correct.
resolve the problem.
Future needs is great, but until they can figure out how to fix this building, you can't add it onto a building that's already falling apart. It just doesn't make any sense. I guess that's why we haven't said anything, until we have some answers of what they're gonna do with this. Yeah, there is a need, but
Yeah. I think the administrator's on the right track, though, the way, the
Okay.
direction she's taking, no question.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll get that narrow question answered,
yes.
and still wait to hear on, just to make sure that we're not stepping on anything else. Okay.
It might be time to see, Chief, if there is a need
I think we
to
put that on.
address the expansion of this facility.
And I don't only think the police, both
Yeah,
the
we-
police and fire, I
Right.
mean, this is a safety.
Right, we did put that on ours. Our questionnaire to our department, we did talk about the fact that we had space and those needs.
No, it isn't.
You did, huh?
Yeah. Locker room space, conference room space, parking area, we talked about before, and that goes back to your land, your land comment. Equipment storage and impound space that really doesn't exist at this point. And that's separate from, that's for the future, that's separate from the current problems with the building now. But yeah, we'll get that answer, and then we can.
I'll ask the administrator to ask the engineering firm to consider that as additional input as to whether expansion can be part of the equation when we're looking at the problem.
And if
Especially if
you-
you have some specific requests,
Right.
demands.
And we'll get together and fire starting the CIP, so I'll let you call me and we'll schedule something, we
Mhm.
can start on that.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, now we're down to old business. On the DARE account, I sent you a memo, that email we received from Christine. What I tried to say is that, remember when we had the DARE program, when citizens donated money, it went to the DARE program, and they drew money out of that for the field day for the kids or other issues that had to do with the DARE program. One of the things that had been talked about was to, because there had been a $100 donation recently to the town in the neighborhood police department, was taking the money that's in the old DARE account and moving it, changing it or moving it or doing whatever, so we have one account that is more for, instead of titling it DARE, which limits it to that, titling it whatever Christine thinks, community programs or school programs or whatever, so that if somebody donated money, it would go into this one account, and we maybe can draw out of it for issues with the school with the SRO or other things that are along whatever the guidelines are. As you see from Christine's from memo, she gave you 3 options of how to deal with this issue. According to her memo, as you see here, she's saying that in the current DARE special fund, there's $3,804. She offered 3 options, which number 1 was to do nothing and the money just sits there. Number 2, spend the money on DARE-related items. That would be her preference. And we'd have to talk to her about if we can still do that if we don't actually have a DARE program running in the schools. Or 3, she said, write the monies off to a revenue account.
Yeah, but it doesn't say anything in there about putting it in under a new title.
No, I think that's what she's saying is you can't.
Well, yeah, I understand, so we need to see if we can use the money for DARE-related items,
Right.
or...
Well, that would be, my suggestion would be is that number 1, my first thing is that I try number 2, and if not, what would the commission, if you agree with that, then what would you prefer answer? Would you prefer me to give back to her from you
I'd say
guys?
write it off towards taxes.
The schools no longer have a DARE program. They have that aspect rolled into something else. Is
Right,
that the
they
way?
informed us a number of years ago they didn't want to have the DARE program. What's this program called now?
Steps to success.
Steps to Success, right.
Now, how much of that Steps to Success deals with those kinds of issues?
After 21 years, do you want me to answer, John?
Well, it wasn't called that, it was called DARE, so that's why I'm asking the question.
It was rolled in, but I don't know specifically what the percentage would be.
I'm just wondering, with the Steps to Success, those components, how much they deal with related, the original DARE program?
I don't know, because it was a curriculum that the school does, and we weren't part of that
Because
curriculum.
another program, and I don't think they do it anymore, and that probably lends itself to renaming it, is the GREAT
Right, we
program.
don't do that anymore.
That's kind of too bad, because here you have students that come from a very small, not very small, but a small community, fairly small community, and they go into other districts, and some of them are blown away. You know?
Why did that go so?
We lost our officer. We did that
Great.
training for the grade, yeah.
And then we had
And then
Manchester
we had
one year.
Manchester,
had
yeah.
We used
one,
Manchester,
yeah.
I know, 1 year, which,
Does Manchester still do it?
I believe they do.
'Cause I
Yeah.
haven't seen the car on the
it was,
service vans.
that was a good program, I'm not gonna say great program, but I mean, it was a very good program.
Who's controlling this $3,800 a week?
No, it's just in an account right
It's in an
now.
account because there
Yeah,
were
but-
donations made.
But who makes the disposition of $3,800? I mean,
Well, we used to draw out of that if, with an appropriate, for an appropriate purpose. So if, when we actually had the DARE program, if we bought $500 worth of DARE items, we would send the bill to the
T-shirts and
town, and
that
it would be
stuff.
relayed to DARE, and we would have to justify the finance that it was for DARE, and then they would take it out of that
Used to
account.
do the t-shirts, the pens.
They used to do
all kinds
an
of
award ceremony, they
Right.
used to do whatever they needed for the
well,
program.
it sounds like she wants to get rid of this account. Can't we just give it to this Steps for Success or something, school department, I mean,
Well, that's why we asked her what the options were, and this is what you see here, so I wanted to see what your thoughts
Yeah,
were.
but can we ask her about the steps to success and see if they have an
Yeah.
account for that? If they do, I don't see why we couldn't transfer it over. It's basically the same thing.
Did you guys, Maura, did you have an account for that, you know?
Not
or-
specifically, no.
See, then I don't think you'd get away with it if they didn't have a specific, like this account where it's specific. I don't think we'd get away with that.
Well, how about this? First, we'll ask that question. Then I'll go to number 2 and see if we can find, if we can do anything the way number 2 talks about in our options. And then if neither of those work out, do you want to go to number 3 on our options here? Or do you want to discuss it more in the future? It's up to you guys.
I would want to go to 2. She says some related program, that, you know, in the school system, I mean.
Right. That's, those people that donated that money with that intent.
Right.
And I think it's only, right that it should go to that.
I agree, but I'm just saying, we're dealing with
But
the
could it
finance
go
of the
to school
auditors and where the
resource?
money goes. Well, again, this is the answer we got from finance, so I can't answer those questions. We said to finance, this is what's going on, and this is what we got back for
See
options.
if we can clarify it a little bit.
You're right, I would think
Is-
that she
well-
can ask her.
I hate to impose on you again, but do you want to work with us as far as asking those questions where you're aware of the DARE program in the past?
I don't have any
Well, I'm
problem.
just thinking because, we don't have that institutional knowledge that you have on that end. It might be easier to have the discussion.
Well, see, I don't even have all the knowledge because steps to success happened after I left. They improved on me. But that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine, because like I say, I think the money was given by the public for that reason, and,
Well, maybe what we do, maybe you and I can sit down with Christine and go give her some history, see what she has for information from the auditors,
mhm.
and see what our options are, other than, if there's any options other than what she's already given us in this memo.
Mhm.
Does that sound okay? Dave, does that sound okay? I think it was last month we talked about we were going to do the police department was going to be the training to the town officials. Priscilla, that was done, correct?
Excuse me.
With Sergeant Blanchett, that was done, the training to the school officials. What date was that done? Do you remember? August 26th?
It was August 26th.
So that was done as we talked about, so I think that along with the memorandum, we should get everybody on the same page and with some direct training to the school officials as far as the Safe Schools Act and, the school's requirements under the Department of Ed rule. So that has been accomplished. The last item I had for public session was something we touched on quickly earlier, was that the Facilities Committee will be coming through, be doing the PD at 8 o'clock tomorrow. Myself, Captain Daigle, Francine will meet with the committee members, give them a tour, we'll go over the questionnaire to the department heads that were sent around to the respective departments. We already kind of talked quickly what was in that, and go from there. That'll be part of the administrator's overall program that you guys are working on.
Yeah, the program is something we've never had.
Right.
So long-term,
Because it's not just for the problems currently, but it's also for all the town buildings, long range for the future, so we're not waiting until something's falling apart anywhere before we're dealing with it. So we'll be doing that tomorrow morning, starting at 8 here.
I had a question about the education of the school officials. Is that something that's done annually?
This is the first year we've done it. In the past years, we would sign the memorandum of understanding, that would be turned over, signed by us and the SAU jointly. It was always up to the school to train their own people, and the Department of Ed puts requirements on them also to do certain things. We thought with all the discussions this year that we would offer to them actually having staff come in and maybe answer some questions and give some scenarios give them a little bit more in-depth of what, you can read the memo, but maybe give them some more in-depth examples or whatever of situations that occur in the schools, or they could give us examples of what occur in the schools, and we could put our heads together and say, for example, assault among 8th graders is different than improper physical contact between 2 kids in 2nd grade. So one logically would be a violation of the law, depending on how it went. One logically would not. Yet the Safe Schools Act doesn't say that, it just talks about assaults. So that was done.
Under other business, the new category that's missing.
That new category is missing.
Joanne has a few things to put in.
Just a question. I know in Manchester, they started a, I don't know if it's a program, but they wanted to address the issue of graffiti. Now, I know on occasion we have had incidents like that, and I just wondered with regard to Hooksett, do we have anything in place as far as...
One of the things I wanted to offer up in regards to my last discussion when I asked permission from Chief Agfiotis about working with Captain Cecilio on crime statistics. One of the things I was thinking about in that portion is there is an opportunity in which to work, if there's going to be some development with the Hooksett website, to put a interface on there that people can come in and say, hey, there's a tag on this building at this location, and that could be fed to the police department to track that type of graffiti. I personally have had to paint over graffiti on a lot of the baseball fields and some of the soccer fields and so forth in my volunteer work, so of course that is an issue.
All right.
I was only bringing it up because that's what I've heard of lately, that there have been some incidents where that was happening, and I just wondered how we as a town, whether or not we do something with the schools, you know, bring that into as part of their program or whatever, how to curtail that type of activity, and as a police department, what you would do, you know, what is the response with regard to something like that?
When we either are notified of the citizens or the officers see it on patrol, we normally do an information report. It goes to the detectives. They try to identify if it's a local gang or what the origin is. Backtrack if possible to where it's coming from, and then try to address that problem. And we have gangs coming through town that are related to Manchester,
right,
or area south. There are gangs in towns north of us. So we've done that on an as-need basis also. It's something though that whether we see or we learn from any source from the citizens in whatever way, that a report gets done and the detectives follow up on that, and they work with obviously Manchester and the state and other departments to see what's going on. Just last week, the week before, our detectives went to a meeting, I think a Merrimack County investigators meeting, where some local gang activity in other communities was discussed, and a whole packet of information was put out to all our officers of the tags that this new group is using and where they, you know, who the associates are and all that stuff. So we do keep track of that, but there's not a formal program, if you will, of that. It's taken as dealt with as a criminal act, if you will, and an intelligence aspect from our detectives.
Because when I was on the board, I can remember going to a workshop, and the premise basically was that if you allow those things to be visible, it just encourages more. It encourages it more. And the thought process was to attend to it immediately, trying to find out who the culprits are, but attend to it immediately. Therefore, you know, it's not visible, so it's not encouraged.
Broken window theory covers up many issues.
Public Works to do that, though.
Well, I mean, if it's happening, I think Mr. Lazarchus said that they did at the baseball fields, and that's where I think it was on one of the buildings, and I think that became the responsibility of the school district.
I think one of the things that I'm working on is, like I said, it was going to be about a 6-month program, and I'm still compiling what I need from Captain Cecilio. But we could add a field in there which talks about that, because the idea about the project I'm working on is to identify hotspots and do tracking, basically to do the analysis that allows maybe the police force to go to the.
I don't think she's talking about discussing it, I think she's talking about getting it off.
Right, right.
And there is no formal way. I know Mike Sorrell's complained many times about the bridge on Cross Road, and Highway Department goes and paints over it, and then 20 minutes later, somebody else paints on it. But
Right.
that's still gonna have to go through the town as
Right.
far as a cure. Yeah, we'll go do the initial investigation and pass it on that it needs to be fixed, but I don't know if Public Works has that type of,
But I'm just wondering
Capability.
if it's something that the town council has to adopt? Because, like I said, it's
I
been
think
an
they do.
ongoing issue.
It is.
We've tried, several times at the Memorial School when it was middle school of putting lights on in the evening. That way they were less apt to. At the Underhill School, they put on the gate, they locked the gate at night to try to discourage, there was a number of things that they did.
From our point of view, what we do is when the problems pop up, whether we find them or they come to our attention, we deal with the reporting end, we deal with the investigative end, and we notify whether it's the state or the town or whatever as far as their end of what Dave's talking about, covering it up. So I think we've done, at this point, I'm not sure what more we could do, to be honest with you, because I don't believe, it's not the kids in the local schools that we're having the issues with, and that are doing this type of stuff. I mean, it may happen in some areas, but some of the larger stuff you see is a lot more organized and hooks it.
And we used to have, what was the name of that youth thing that they had to do, volunteer service?
That's through the town.
Down, right.
Actually, I'm not sure the town even does it anymore. New services officer for the town.
Right, that used
Oh,
to
you guys
do
don't have
it.
that anymore, right?
When, whatchamacallit was here,
I know what you mean. Can't think
long dark hair.
of
I'm having a
the name. Marie
senior-
Goddard.
Marie Goddard, yes.
Yeah.
When she was,
Town doesn't punch it. No, town doesn't
they
have
did
that.
it in conjunction with the schools, and if anybody that, they would do community service.
Town doesn't
Okay.
have that, no.
Sorry, I
This
digress.
particular issue, I can bring it up to the council, but it definitely has to be a town issue from
yes.
the police department, from the highway department.
Well, like I said, we do it now, where, we would deal with it and then notify the highway, so,
I don't know if the highway department can be, I guess they would have to be the one finally lines up correctly.
painting it, I guess.
It's like you say, if they paint over it, then they the following week.
But she's right, we can't just leave it there,
No,
that
you can't.
abandoned building by the corner where the school is, bad enough it's abandoned and it's completely tagged. I mean, somebody's gonna own
Right,
it.
and we reported that
If
numerous times.
somebody's gonna own that building, it's up to the town to now notify that person to do something. Same thing Manchester does, if a building burns, you just don't get to leave it there forever.
Right. I just
don't
thought
think
that
it
the
falls
town
through.
has like a noise ordinance, whether, I don't know if this falls under that, and,
You'd have to establish an ordinance.
yeah, and that's why I'm asking whether or not it should stem from there, and then,
We shall address it.
it was just a,
Yeah, it's a good idea.
and the only other thing that I had, and I think we need to put it on the next agenda that we had agreed upon, how we would be, the meetings with regard to what constitutes being put on the agenda, what criteria they need to meet.
Yeah,
Okay,
Absolutely.
and with regard to some of the policies we want to have in place, whether or not we want to continue with the 5-minute input, whether or not we want to change it, or whatever, I think that was one of the questions. Another thing that we wanted to put on further agendas, an upcoming agenda, was whether or not we wanted to do exit interviews. I know the chief had included something in the packets with regard to that, and I think perhaps we need to discuss it and decide one
It's
way.
actually something I want to discuss with you in non-public.
Oh,
This is
okay,
tonight.
I'm sorry. That's all I had. I think I covered it all.
you have other business? Public input?
80 Pearl, 79 Main Street. Is there a specific reason that you have an attorney present tonight?
No. Is there?
We had
is our rate of pay for this term?
I don't have that offhand.
We had a meeting with him prior, but we're paying him to sit here now? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
$200 an hour?
How much?
I don't know, $200 an hour? You know, can you tell us, somebody tell us how much he's getting paid?
That's information the commissioners cannot give.
Well, I think it's public information, we could find out if we need to, but it'd be a little bit more, a little easier if you just tell us.
I don't know. Why don't you call, I don't know if you,
Well-
right to know, you can ask the finance
I think that
officer.
you have a reason for having him here. We don't, as a town taxpayer, I don't want to pay him to sit here and observe our meeting. From the union leader on September 10th of this year, the chief was quoted as saying, "That is what I was going to go there and tell them what's happening," referring to the possible Hooksett Commission expansion bill that was being heard in the legislature. Chief, what were you referring to in the paper?
What I was referring to was that in the last year or so, there's been a lot of issues and allegations thrown at myself and the commission. The commission has been following the laws of the state of New Hampshire, has been following the rules and regulations of the department in terms of the collective bargaining agreement and legal advice in handling all issues. So there may be people that disagree with the issues and don't understand the issues, that there has not been anything that the commission has not done as far as proper steps as far as the personnel issues. I know it's aggravating for citizens that you can't hear what's going on, but that's the law of the state of New Hampshire. We didn't make that up as far as personnel issues.
How is that relevant to a possible expansion of the commission to 5 instead of 3? That's what I don't understand.
It's relevant only in that I've expressed to different counselors that I don't feel that the counselors gave the commission at least a fair chance to have a discussion with them of whether 3 or 5 would be a benefit or not. There's pros and cons. And I think that the commission should have at least had the opportunity to sit with the council when the council was considering that change, as they've done when they've sat, as the council's done when they've sat with other boards, and discuss it. Doesn't mean they wouldn't come up, they might all agree, and that would be fine. I think, as Mr. Myville would say, it's the process, and I think that the process has been flawed as far as not getting some input from the commission as far as what the council was seeing, why they thought it was a good idea. It may very well be an excellent idea, but I think that it was not that fair to the commissioners to not involve them in at least getting some input from them prior to making that decision.
Do you deny telling Mr. Booton that you would hang out Hooksett laundry?
Absolutely, I did not make that statement.
Interesting. At the last meeting, you told us that you would look into the issue of the 4th Defina memo and who was lying about that. Have you done that?
I still haven't got that. They have not received.
The 4th memo?
I had asked for a copy of it, and I forgot who said they would present me
Well,
with a
Mr.
copy.
Gagnon, back in, I don't even know how long ago it was, you held that memo up and you said somebody's lying and we're going to find out. The sheriff's report didn't address it. I brought it up last month. You said you were going to address it.
What I said was, I would get a copy of it, and then we would address it, and I don't have a copy of it.
That was published to the, that was handed out in this room, and you can't produce a copy of it, and therefore we have another month without any answers. Is that what you're telling me? Did the SRO program fail last year? Chief?
Not totally, no.
Okay, thank you. From the minutes of May 19th, I stated that Mr. Ouellette had asked Captain Cecilio why his statements about reports excluding minutes and the questions were never answered. Chairperson Gagnon stated that he would look into this. That is in the minutes of the May 19th meeting. Have you looked into that?
What's the question?
Why the statements by Captain Cecilio at the November meeting regarding school reports was excluded from the minutes. I asked you, referring to a question by Mr. Ouellette, and you said you were going to look into that.
I did look into it, and nobody had an answer to it. And I don't know what else to tell you. I don't take the minutes. We didn't have an answer to it. We have discussed it, and I don't know how it got omitted.
What did you do to look into it?
You know what? I'm not going to go back and tell you exactly how I went into it. In 5 minutes are up. Anyone else?
All right, I just have a few comments in regards to, I guess, the culmination of the events. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
I'm Todd Lazat, 21 Post Road. And in regards to the culmination of the I guess, the Defina firing. You know, my opinion, has known, I think things were too swift, too targeted, and too premeditated. The reality of the situation is that, you know, I believe that, you know, we lost a good man, and I'm not sure that anyone can convince me any other, you know, any other case. I believe that things need to be revamped and revitalized in regards to the commission. I don't know the political aspects in regards to being approached or asked an opinion about expansion, but I think 5 commissioners might, you know, allow a little bit more, you know, impartial adjudication of certain events that transpired in the since November. I believe Joanne McHugh is one of the first positive steps I've seen in that direction. I wish to extend you my gratitude for being the only holdout in the termination of Jay Defina. I'm not trying to suggest to everyone here to substantiate or suggest that her vote in any way was based on an inclination towards innocence or guilt in terms of Defina. But I do believe that Ms. McHugh's vote did represent an appropriate course of action and leadership in the de-escalation of this situation that occurred. And I believe this de-escalation should have took place back in November, December of last year. As for Officer Defina's fate and those that remain at HPD, if we're to believe what is said in the papers by members of this commission and Defina's supervisor and the chief himself, that Defina's termination was fair and just. If we're to believe that this decision is truly justified, that would mean we need to accept all those assertions as self-evident. I really, and I keep continuously saying this, I don't really know very much about Jay, but I had asked some questions and I was given this. If I reconcile what I hear to actual facts, like in May of 2008, we received this accommodation to look beyond the traffic stop and given by the Police Standards and Training Council. In September 23rd of 2008, received a command letter signed by Lieutenant Klein and Chief Akrofiotis regarding a school bus incident which involved 52 Hooksett students, and where Officer Defina was able to utilize his contacts and things that he developed, I guess, in regards to the SRO program, his execution of his job. And I guess in that letter was sent to, the superintendent of schools sent a letter to the police department for their efforts. November 6, 2008, received a first-line supervisor letter of recognition signed by Lieutenant Klein and Chief Akrofiotis regarding a call of a burglary in progress. The letter said, "Keep up the good work." On November 27th, he received first-line supervisor letter of recommendation signed by Lieutenant Klein and Chief Akrofiotis regarding a major automobile accident where Officer Defina was one of 2 officers that dragged a seriously injured victim away from the vehicle as the glass exploded as a result of the vehicle being engulfed in flames. This letter praises Defina's professionalism. So it's also interesting to note that Officer Defina also scored second highest in the sergeant scores, which to me is an interesting indication of capability. If I was to judge him in regards to the Post-it note inquisition and weigh those 2 against each other, I'd have a hard time justifying what happened to him. So why does it seem that this department has decided to destroy this man? That's a rhetorical question. A 10-year veteran who, by the acknowledgement of the supervisors and commanding officer and the chief of the department, acted heroically to save the life of a citizen, handled serious accidents involving students. And by all accounts, the man has been systematically destroyed, in my opinion, but I feel he's the type of officer I want in this community. It just doesn't make sense to me. Jay DeFina has demonstrated he is a person who could devise practical solutions from the fundamental foundations of his training, his experience, and through his approachability. We just seem to continue to lose future leaders like Jay, those that have extensive years of experience and hooks at specific issues. Why? I guess we need these types of people as officers that can think independently, take responsibility for projects, take action without detailed supervision, and create solutions that are bound to be needed in this town. I guess I want to just close with the statement that if you look at this and you look at the evidence, it's a 10-year veteran up until December, and then I'm led to believe that all of a sudden this guy came crashing down. To me, that means that there's a lack of a support structure for these officers. Why was he placed in a corner? Why did he feel like he was placed in a corner? I'm not saying that he didn't lash out. Maybe he did. But the question is, would any of us act any different? The question is escalation of events. I think that needs to be looked at just for the sake of the other officers, just to understand what went wrong. If he's gone forever, that's fine. I did what I needed to do, and from this point on, I'll support this commission. I'll support whatever things come about. But my interest is to figure out what really happened here and not let it happen to another officer. Because the reality of it is, if it was purposeful, then that's bad. If it was based on just the way the system is, the system needs to be changed. I think everyone here can focus on that. Maybe we can save this department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura Willett, 3 Summerfair Street. I just have a question that I'm concerned about, whether or not an officer leaves or is terminated. What happens to the cases that he was working on, whether he's arrested somebody or anything like that, and it's going forward? What happens at that point? Are those cases dropped? Can they continue on?
They certainly continue on.
Even without that officer's input, if he was the arresting officer?
The person, he would be subpoenaed, he's still a person that can come and testify about what happened.
If he's terminated, why?
Just like if an officer resigns or retires, they still dealt with the issue they dealt with, and we would subpoena them to come to court to testify as a witness, regardless of what their status is.
So we can expect terminated officers to be subpoenaed to come in? The reason I'm asking is we
I
had
don't
a rather
understand.
substantial case that happened a couple of weeks ago that I read about in the paper that involved, I don't know if you want to call him a pedophile or a rapist or what at this point, but in my mind it's rather substantial, and I don't want to see that case fall by the wayside because you've terminated an officer, and I'm really concerned about it.
Like, I'm not the prosecutor, so I can't discuss the details of the case.
Right, I understand that.
But the only way, if an officer leaves here under whatever circumstances, retirement or whatever, they're not gone. We still expect them to come in. If the prosecutor uses them for their case, that's the prosecutor's call. So the case still goes forward.
Even in the event of a termination? It's a little different than a retirement, that's why I'm asking.
Unless, again, theoretically, if the termination had something to do with credibility, then the prosecutor has a problem as far as bringing forward, using any witness, current officer, former officer, or citizen that may have a credibility issue. So theoretically, it depends on why the officer was terminated and how that relates to their involvement and to what extent they might have had with that arrest. If they were one of many officers there, maybe their testimony isn't needed, just like even for current officers. If you have 5 officers at the scene of something, we don't necessarily have to bring all 5 in for the...
Well, that was where my question was headed, because if it involves the arresting officer and the one that, say, confiscated all the evidence, then I think you might have an issue.
But that's up to the prosecutor to figure out.
Okay.
But, cases just don't get dropped because somebody is no longer an employee here for whatever reason.
Okay.
But the prosecutor obviously takes into account the fact the person's not an employee, what the reasons they're not an employee, and does that or does that not impact the prosecutor's ability to prosecute the case.
Okay, thank you. Regarding the Hooks and Ideas seminar or workshop, whatever you want to call it, that the town had, my husband and I did attend it, and it's actually kind of ironic that one of the things that came out of it was graffiti, and talked about the concern for that, and it was viewed upon as volunteers would go out, maybe work with the police department where they could notify, kind of keep an eye out as to where it is and let people know, and then there would be 1 or 2 days where people go out and paint. And I think the town was gonna supply the paint too. So kind of interesting that you brought that up. But that workshop was a great workshop, and it would be something I would recommend for the police side. I think it would really help to calm things down. Regarding the commission going from 3 to 5, you had talked at one of the commission meetings about the pros and cons, and I honestly can't think of any cons, and I was wondering if you had cons in mind.
I do, but I don't want to discuss it at this point. Not this allegation hanging out there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Just one question in regards to credibility. If the officer had a credibility problem, the officer wouldn't be put out, correct? Like, he wouldn't be allowed to work if he had a credibility problem, a serious credibility problem.
It depends on the situation. Each case is different.
Excuse me, J.R. Willett, 3 Summerfield Street. Getting back to that Lori case, Henry, this case you reviewed, was it relating to an officer who hooks it, or was it just a generic case?
It's a generic case.
Okay. These laptops, I know you're kind of looking for, it appears to me you don't want to hook these laptops up, and it seems like you're trying to find a way of not hooking up these laptops. Is that what, because it sounds like you're looking at using the impact fees for possibly expanding your building or something?
That's not what I said. I directed him to find out if we could use the impact fees to fund the rest of the laptop.
Okay, but it sounded like you were talking about, let's take a look at the building, see if we can
No.
use the funds for
No,
that.
he asked whether the town council was looking at using those funds for that. His direction tonight and last month was to find out if impact fees could be used to finish setting up those laptops. And once we know that, we'll know how we have to fund them. No question in my mind, those need to get turned on.
Okay, I just want to know what your position was on that. If an officer is at the end of their shift and they're in the middle of questioning a witness involving a felony, are they allowed to continue on and getting compensated for it?
If they continue working, they have to be compensated.
Well, let's say if they're in the middle of a felony case and they're questioning somebody, and let's say it's the end of their shift, can they continue on the questioning, or do they have to leave?
No, they continue on. They notify their supervisor what they're doing, and the supervisor, if what they're doing is relevant and justified, the supervisor authorizes them to stay and finish what they're doing.
Okay,
It would make no sense to do otherwise.
okay, I agree with you. Can you tell me why Captain Cecilio thinks the sheriff's investigation was conducted on him?
I think. Paul, do you want to answer it?
That's what the sheriff, when I first initially interviewed with the sheriff's department, they asked me what I thought the interview was about. That's when I advised them what I thought the interview was about, and I was not corrected. Because you have to have a subject of in an internal investigation as well as witnesses. So therefore, the sheriff's department did not correct the fact that I was subject of. So that's your question.
Did that mean the paperwork was miswritten, or?
Mr. Lizotte, you had your 5 minutes. Does that answer your question, Mr. J.R.?
Not really.
Well, J.R., why don't you ask him if the IA was miswritten?
Yeah, that's really what it was. It?
We can't, no, we're not, okay.
We haven't had a discussion yet?
No.
No.
I was just wondering why the sheriff's investigation was not part of the SRO's memo as previously instructed by Chairman Gagnon. I was wondering who made the formal request for the sheriff's investigation.
We cannot, I believe the chief.
You actually have a letter that was in your packet.
Yes.
Actually, I think you asked last month about that. Somebody asked about what was asked of the sheriff's department when they were investigating. It should have been in your packet.
I don't think so.
It was identified to be in your.
I was missing a few things in this package, so. Do you have it?
No, you were the only one that was going to because you had said.
I was gonna say, I didn't read anything about that.
Yeah, it's in my packet.
Was in my packet.
That's all right, I had it in Henry's mail too. I didn't
as you remember, the commission discussed having the sheriff's department look into it, and the question that was discussed here, and that went to the commission, the question that went to the sheriff's department was this: did any member of the Hooksett Police Department intentionally try to cover up the existence of safe school reports regarding the College School, or attempt to cover up safety issues in the Hooksett Public Schools?
And I believe that addressed the lie.
That was
Comment.
that was the wording from the commission of what the sheriff's department was being asked to investigate.
That was what I asked for last month when I said I had asked for a copy of it. It just went to Henry and said it to me. That's why I said I didn't get it.
But if you go back and look at the videotape, it's pretty clear that you said the investigation was going to be based on Jay's memo.
Correct, I do remember saying that.
Okay, and I'm just wondering, how did it come from the memo being investigated to safe school reports?
But that's what everything was based on, was the safe school reports. We were accused of lying on the safe school reports, was the accusation made. If I remember correctly, and I could be wrong at this point, it's going back months.
No. Yes, we can use it.
Going from memory, it was based on two conflicting stories, and we felt that somebody was lying on the safe school reports. We had two opposite ends.
I think you need to look at that memo, the videotape. You'll see that it's pretty clear that what the investigation was going to be on was about Jay's memo.
What was the memo?
Safe school reports.
What was the memo?
Excuse me?
What was the memo?
He had three or four different memos. One was basically,
The ones that we supposedly said to be rewritten 4 different times.
That is correct.
Am I correct?
that is correct.
I don't,
If you read the first memo and you read the last memo, you'll see there's 2 different stories in there.
which we've never read, I don't believe.
I would suggest you read those 2 because they're...
Okay. That's time, JR.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none. Like to move that we go into non-public session under,
RSA 91A, colon 2, 1A, A, colon 3, question 2.